That's so important for us. And it is told to us over and over again, you're never alone. You're never alone. I am here constantly. I am always here guiding you and directing you. Let's experience that. So the Course is always helping us to experience that, telling us that. But we have to be willing to. We can't let other things block that awareness for us. And then that's why, to me, the Course also says this, let healing be. Get out of your own way. You've probably said it before, I'm my worst enemy when it comes to my peace and healing. My judgments from the past get in my way. Whereas other people can look at a situation and say, oh, don't worry about that, this and this and this. And you go, well, wait a minute, you have no idea that this and this has happened before when I've done that and that and that. And it'll happen again. And you go, and they go, well, really? Oh, I didn't know that. You're right, I don't know that. And we need to say, yeah, right, I didn't know that either. I have to be willing and open my mind to the possibility that things are not always going to be the way they were, that transformation and change can take place because of who our Father is and who we are. And that's what this lesson is saying. God needs to be our life. We need to recognize we can't move without him. He's kind of looking over our shoulder when we forget him. Not that he's looking over our shoulder, but that's where we've kind of put him. You know, he's standing right there with us, but we've kind of denied his presence in our lives. And that's what this has said. I was mistaken when I thought that I lived apart from God, a separate entity that moved in isolation, unattached and housed within a body, as this lesson says. This is what is my mistake. And there's a lot to that sentence, if you notice that. It says that I lived apart from God, that I in any way could survive and be separate. You know, if you go into outer space, we go into, and you go to a planet, or you go into what is kind of considered, I guess, an environment that's not good for you. What would you call that? An unfriendly environment, let's say. You go into outer space, it's an unfriendly environment. Why would that be? Because you can't breathe, right? You would need something to help you participate in this environment. If you go to another planet, unfriendly environment. Well, the Course would say this Earth is an unfriendly environment. And that in this unfriendly environment, just like in an environment that has no oxygen, you need support to be able to survive. He's saying that in this unfriendly environment, you need him to be able to survive. And the fact that you are here surviving means that he is with you, because you could not survive without him. So within this seemingly unfriendly environment, we survive only because of God. In this illusory environment, we survive only because of God. And that's why it's saying here, you thought you could live apart from him. Impossible. You thought that you could be a separate entity, that you are isolated and alone, and yet you know you are not. You know that you are so interconnected with everyone and everything. Did you watch It's a Wonderful Life? Everybody has to at Christmas time, right? We know what happens if you'd never been born. We saw what happened to George Bailey. But I think about that. I mean, that's kind of a fun way to think about it, but we don't realize how we connect to so many other people, even when we think we don't. How critically important we are in the great plan of it all. That we think we are a separate entity that can move in isolation, unattached and housed within a body, is simply an illusion or a dream. I don't know if you've ever heard this before. I know I've shared this before, that the largest living organism, maybe you've heard this one, in the world, is an aspen grove in Colorado. Did you know that? It's an aspen grove, a grove of trees in Colorado. And the reason why it is kind of an illusion to us is because the aspen grove doesn't look like it's connected, except under the ground, it is connected by one single root connection. So all of those trees are connected by one root connection. Now, it looks as if they're independent, right? Growing on their own. And yet, they are connected. It's probably the best example of us that nature duplicates. We look like we're all walking around disconnected. And yet, we are connected by a life source, a power that is greater than our understanding, than our, say, individual understanding at times. So this idea that we are a separate entity that moves in isolation, unattached and housed within a body, is just as silly for us to think as it is for those trees to think that they are independent and could suffer and another not. or could flourish and another not, unless we don't recognize our source, unless we crimp the root or have it get disconnected in some way, and then it seems to be limited or it seems to be hurt and harmed. But in reality, it can never be. That's how connected we are. And when we think that we are disconnected from each other, when we think that we move in isolation, when we think that we are unattached, when we think that we are housed only within this physical body, and that not being here means that we are not joined, we are simply making, as this says here, a mistake. A mistaken thought. I was mistaken when I thought. Nothing more than a mistaken thought. So when you start to feel those depressive ideas that love to come to us at the beginning of a new year, by the way, those people make a lot of movements at the beginning of a new year. People let go physically at the end of a year and the beginning of a new year too. There's a lot of transition that happens. And that's not a bad thing. That can be kind of an exciting thing. If we are transitioning into a new awareness and new understanding, how exciting that can be for us. So it's time for us to be determined to make this year different by really committing to make it all the same. To be aware of who and what we are. My life is God, I live and move in Him. And that when we feel unattached, when we feel separate, when we feel isolated, to recognize it's just a mistaken thought. Look at those thoughts that scare you. Look at those thoughts that depress you. Look at those thoughts that make you feel guilty or unworthy. And do not give them the power that you have in the past. Look at them and say, no, my life is God's. I live and move in Him. Would I diminish the power of the universe?